Howard for mixing it up with Montrezl Harrell. That's a lot of contact. There's no call there. And then you're like, okay, listen, hey, man, no, you need to get out of my personal space because right now, the space issue, we got problems. And then you got a TV timeout and just an intentional bump because I'm walking here. Howard tossed your head coach.
Clowns, guys just joking around. I mean, it's ridiculous on both parts. So I didn't like it. Mike has 2 fouls. I think our next biggest guy is me.
All right, Doc was 6'4", 185 when he played, and he hadn't played in a while. Let's go fourth quarter. Kyle Kuzma playing. He had 25. He hits the 3. I got to tell you, the intentional gray hair is a personal attack. That is a choice.
Oh, no, I like it.
Personal. Yeah, okay. Well, you don't have the same issue. Ben Simmons
I very much
circles to Danny Green, who had 8 threes. 28 points for him. Sixers win. Lakers 0-4 without LeBron, Nicole.
Back to where we started with this whole conversation as we bring in our Adrian Wojnarowski. That is a 4th straight loss for the Lakers without LeBron, without AD. It's also the side of crickets because they were quiet at the trade deadline. So where does this team go from here?
Nicole, the buyout market, and that starts for the Lakers with Andre Drummond, who's getting a buyout from the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he's being pursued by all the contenders, teams both in the Eastern and Western Conference. But I know some of the Laker players have already begun their recruiting of Andre Drummond, and certainly there's an opportunity for him, to really step right in and become the starting center for the Lakers. They're going to talk to him here, the front office and coaching staff here in short order. And that's where the priority starts for LA, to bring in some rebounding rim protection, that they lost last offseason with Dwight Howard leaving the Lakers.
They can make this real simple, too. Dwight Howard gone. Let's bring in Andre Drummond because they're playing the Cavs tonight. Just walk across the floor, swap the uniforms. Super easy. Thanks, Woj.
In your mind, was there a big winner and a big loser?
Well, I think certainly the Miami Heat bringing on Victor Oladipo and really giving them an opportunity for the long term to see if he fits. And he was a player that we know there's been a mutual interest between Oladipo in wanting to eventually get to Miami and the Heat wanting to have him, especially once Giannis Antetokounmpo went off the board and he wasn't going to be available for them to pursue. And I think now they get him for this window of time. They can have their medical team get a good look at him, see his health, and then see how he fits in there. And not just whether they'd want to sign him longer term, but how much do they want to pay him? And they certainly get a player here for the rest of the season that can potentially help this group, as they kind of climb their way, get healthier, get past some of those early COVID issues, and kind of do what they did last year, just sort of work themselves into sort of that playoff team in the East that becomes a really tough out.
Woj, knowing how much they wanted him, why did the Rockets get so little compensation for Oladipo?
Well, I think a combination of factors with Oladipo. One, that quad injury that he had about a year and a half ago, that concerns people. He's not been as available and on the court as you want a player to be before you're going to invest draft picks or young players in a trade. He's not been terribly efficient in his time in Houston this season since coming over in the trade from the Pacers. And so all around the league, there was interest in Oladipo, bringing him in as essentially a rental for the rest of the season, even without an expectation that you might re-sign him. But the kind of offers you're going to get for a player in that situation, they're just not going to be significant. And, Miami kind of waited until the end of the deadline. And when they didn't have a deal for Kyle Lowry, they were able to pivot. And ultimately, that was the best deal that Houston had on the table. And they ultimately said yes.
Woj, the Hawks have gotten better. The Nets are the Nets. The Milwaukee Bucks are at the top tier. The 76ers have gotten better. Miami has gotten better. What's happening in Boston? Evan Fournier is a very talented player, but it feels like, how come they haven't surrounded Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with more talent?
I mean, Jay, they had the talent. It's been a talent drain in Boston, starting with Kyrie Irving leaving, and then Gordon Hayward leaving in the sign and trade to Charlotte this past season or this off season, and those are players you just don't easily replace. And that's they've had through the years obviously a lot of picks, and we can go through the list of players that they didn't trade for, that they may have had. They have Tatum and you have Brown. You have a cornerstone to build off of there and to add around them. There's no question. That's as good of a young combo as there is in the league. But you've seen this season the Celtics certainly struggled with their depth, with their bench. And then Kemba Walker. I think the knee injury with Kemba Walker, that's limited him. That's impacted this Boston team. He's not been as available consistently and hasn't played as well in stretches as they hoped he would coming from Charlotte. It's been physical. You know what kind of how important winning is to Kemba Walker, what kind of character he has, and I think he's as frustrated as anybody. But listen, Boston was a team that checked in on Kyle Lowry. They don't have the assets to get it done.
KJZ, Alan Hom, Bart Scott in with Jay Will. We're talking with Adrian Wojnarowski. Joins us on the Goodyear Hotline. It's brought to you by Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven. When we were talking yesterday, it felt like Kyle Lowry, it was a given almost that he was going to be on the move, and we were all anticipating where it would be, which of the teams, and there was a couple of teams that seemed to be hot on the trail. You just mentioned earlier how the Heat had to pivot once they knew they weren't going to get that deal done. I just had a theory that I think what Masai was doing here was to see what can I get for him, and if I can get a maximum return. It's sort of like what the Yankees did with Aroldis Chapman, getting a Gleyber Torres and then getting Chapman back in free agency, and maybe that's what they were hoping to do. Am I close on that? What do you know about that situation?
Well, number one, Alan, you lost me on the baseball analogy. I'm a Red Sox fan. I don't even know who those guys are anymore. But it may be exactly like that. But no, you're right. Masai was going to see what the market was going to bring back for him, and he never felt they had to trade him, that they had to give him away. And I think also Kyle Lowry was fine with finishing up this season in Toronto. He has loved playing there. And certainly it's not the same this year for them playing in Tampa. But listen, they got right down to it, 350 or 250, 255. They were still going back and forth with the Lakers, Philly, Miami, and ultimately he just didn't see a deal there that he wanted to do. And I think the other teams, again, this is a 35-year-old player. In some cases, it might have been a rental, and there's going to be limits. Miami's not trading a 21-year-old Tyler Hero for Kyle Lowry at this stage of his career. It doesn't make any sense. And so, listen, they can revisit a new deal in the offseason with Kyle Lowry. They could still get something back for him in a sign and trade. And if he just leaves and you lose that $30 million off of your cap, then it gives you some flexibility with your roster there.
Woj, I got to tell you, every time I saw a picture on the internet of Kyle Lowry playing next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I was like,
yeah.
Oh, is this and obviously that move did not go through, Woj. But how come the Lakers couldn't make a move before the trade deadline? And how come, obviously, with LeBron and AD both being hurt?
Well, I think the Lakers, listen, they did engage on Kyle Lowry. And, remember that Dennis Schroeder is a free agent this summer. They haven't come to terms on an extension during the season. They're limited in how much they can offer him now. I think Schroeder certainly has confidence that there's a need. Some teams like New York and Chicago who have point guard needs, especially now with the Bulls not trading for Lonzo Ball. That he's going to have some leverage in the offseason. I still think a very good chance he goes back to the Lakers. But I think with that uncertainty, you saw him more available in talks yesterday. And so I think for the Lakers, again, when you make a trade at the deadline, you're giving something up, and you're going to have to give something up of value. Nobody's trying to help the Lakers get better without getting something back. And so for them, the buyout market becomes the way to do that. And that's why they're really focused on Andre Drummond right now. I know the Laker players have been trying to recruit him to LA. Certainly there's an opportunity for him to step right in, become the starting center there.